Chapter 4, Section 3. Functional groups are what make a basic carbon skeleton into something specific and functional. The distinctive properties of an organic molecule depend not only on the arrangement of its carbon skeleton, but also on the chemical groups attached to that skeleton. If we start with hydrocarbons as the simplest organic molecules, characteristic chemical groups can replace one or more of the hydrogen atoms bonded to the carbon skeleton of that hydrocarbon. These chemical groups may be involved in chemical reactions or may contribute to the shape and function of the organic molecule in a characteristic way, giving it unique properties. For example, when we learn about proteins, the functional groups are what determine how the bends and folds occur. As an example, the basic structure of testosterone, a male sex hormone, and estradiol, a female sex hormone, is the same. Both are steroids with 4 fused carbon rings, but the hormones differ in the chemical groups attached to the rings. As a result, testosterone and estradiol have different shapes, causing them to interact differently with many targets throughout the body. Here you can see those sex hormones side by side. In other cases, chemical groups known as functional groups affect molecular function through their direct involvement in chemical reactions. Much like Legos, atoms go together to build basic shapes, or those hydrocarbon chains. When we add special pieces like the wheels or the face, then we add a different identity to that basic structure. 7 chemical groups are most important to the chemistry of life: hydroxyl group, carbonyl group, carboxyl group, amino, sulfhydryl group, phosphate group, and methyl groups. The first 6 chemical groups are functional groups. They are hydrophilic and increase the solubility of organic compounds in water. We will discuss the methyl group at the end. Some biologically important chemical groups, you can see them all listed here. The hydroxyl group creates alcohols. The carbonyl group creates ketones and aldehydes, which are types of sugars. Carboxyl group creates carboxylic acid or organic acids, like acetic acid. The amino group is what creates amino acids. The sulfhydryl group creates thiols. Phosphate group, like an organic phosphate, like a phospholipid. And then finally that methyl group gives us methylated compounds. In a hydroxyl group, that OH, a hydrogen atom forms a polar covalent bond with an oxygen atom, which forms a polar covalent bond to the carbon skeleton. Because of these polar covalent bonds, hydroxyl groups increase the solubility of organic molecules. Organic compounds with hydroxyl groups are alcohols, and their names typically end in the OL ending. A carbonyl group consists of an oxygen atom joined to the carbon skeleton by a double bond. Here we can see sugars with ketone groups called ketoses. Those with aldehydes are called aldoses. If the carbonyl group is on the end of the skeleton, the compound is an aldehyde. If the carbonyl group is within the carbon skeleton, the compound is a ketone. Isomers with aldehydes and those with ketones have different properties. A carboxyl group consists of a carbon atom with a double bond to an oxygen atom and a single bond to the oxygen atom of a hydroxyl group. Compounds with carboxyl groups are carboxylic acids. A carboxyl group acts as an acid because the combined electronegativities of the 2 adjacent oxygen atoms increase the chance of dissociation of hydrogen as an ion. An amino group, the NH2, consists of a nitrogen atom bonded to 2 hydrogen atoms and the carbon skeleton. Organic compounds with amino groups are called amines. The amino group acts as a base because it can pick up a hydrogen ion from the solution. Amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, have amino and carboxyl groups. A sulfhydryl group, or SH, consists of a sulfur atom bonded to a hydrogen atom to the backbone. This group resembles a hydroxyl group in shape. Organic molecules with the sulfhydryl groups are called thiols. Two sulfhydryl groups can interact to help stabilize the structure of proteins. A phosphate group consists of a phosphorus atom bound to 4 oxygen atoms, 3 with single bonds and 1 with a double bond. The phosphate group connects to the carbon backbone via one of its oxygen atoms. Phosphate groups are anions with 2 negative charges because 2 protons dissociate from the oxygen atoms. One function of phosphate groups is to transfer energy between organic molecules. Finally, the methyl group. They are not reactive, but they may serve as important markers on organic molecules. ATP is an important source of energy for cellular processes. Adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, is the primary energy transfer molecule in living cells. You might remember we talked about this in biology when we talked about cellular respiration. ATP consists of an organic molecule called adenosine. It's attached to a string of 3 phosphate groups. When one inorganic phosphate ion is split off as a result of a reaction with water, ATP becomes adenosine diphosphate, or ADP. In a sense, ATP stores the potential to react with water, releasing energy that can be used by the cell. Here you can see the adenosine with the 3 phosphate groups bonded together, and then a short version of the reaction that takes adenosine with the 3 phosphates, so ATP, reacting with water. 1 phosphate group breaks off, and now we have ADP and the release of energy. In review, carbon is a versatile and unique atom. Without its structural capabilities, life as we know it would not exist. You will need to be familiar with the concepts in this chapter in order to move on and understand the differences in the biological macromolecules in Chapter 5.